Thanks again for coming out tonight, and thanks to Blank Park Zoo for having me. I was just sharing, hey, I just love Blank Park Zoo and everything that you all are doing here, so I hope that you enjoy the presentation. I'm going to start out just telling a little bit about how I got to be working with Conservation Fusion. As a little girl, I just really loved animals. I just wanted to be a zookeeper. I'm from Omaha, just a hop, skip, and a jump away. So, of course, I just wanted to work at Omaha Zoo. And I thought when I got too old to be flipping hay bales and stuff, I would just become an artist. So that's kind of how I got started. Again, I really loved science. I loved animals. I used to have all these like jars all over my room with air bubblers, and I used to breed guppies. I got to the state science fair one year, and I would try to breed the biggest males with the females with the longest tails. And so I ended up getting a degree in biology at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And after that, I worked at the zoo. I worked at Omaha Henry Dolan Zoo for 13 years. So I did everything that I wanted to, and I really thought I was going to be working with animals for the rest of my life, and I could never imagine not being working with those animals. But at the same time, I also felt like I could do more, and I had the chance to hear Dr. Jane Goodall speak when she was in Omaha. And after her talk, I thought, I love being a zookeeper, but I feel like I should be doing something more. So I just called up Jane Goodall Institute and said, like, hey, I'm the zookeeper from Omaha, and I really think I need to be working for you. And so they said, okay, like, you're hired. I did a year of, I was the regional coordinator for their Roots and Shoots program for North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska. And they gave me this super tiny salary that came from, my boss was a girl that worked at Bramble Park Zoo. She had an office there. And so we did all these projects with the Roots and Shoots program, which does community projects for people, animals, and the environment. So I really enjoyed doing that while I was also doing a zookeeper. Now, of those 13 years, about the last 7 or 8 years that I was at Omaha Zoo, I worked in the Center for Conservation and Research in the Molecular Genetics Lab. And so we had a chance to work with all kinds of projects from all over the world, working with Philippine crocodiles. We worked with Julian Fennessy and the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, looking at giraffe DNA, elephant DNA. And we also had a lot of students from the island of Madagascar. And these students would work in the field collecting genetic samples, and then those samples would be imported back here to the Omaha Zoo, and we would help them with their research projects and help them learn how to be good future scientists in Madagascar. I loved that. I loved working with them. It also gave me the opportunity to visit the island of Madagascar to help those students collect those samples. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the island itself. It's the world's 4th largest island, and it's called a biodiversity hotspot. Who knows what that means?
A lot of plant animal life.
Mm-hmm. Biodiversity is plant and animal life, and a hotspot just means it's disappearing at an alarming rate. So the reason it's called a biodiversity hotspot is because 80%, or 8 out of every 10 of the plants and animals found on the island of Madagascar is found nowhere else on Earth, only Madagascar. So they have an incredible amount of endemic biodiversity. So if we look at these two maps, it just kind of visually helps you understand the magnitude of biodiversity in Madagascar. So if we look at the big map, what is the big map? Good. You guys are great. And how many states are in the United States? 50. So in our 50 states in the United States, we have about 80 different species or different kinds of frogs. And the island of Madagascar is about the size of one of our states. It's about as long as California and as big as Texas. And they have over 800 different species of frogs that we know about. So they have 100 times more biodiversity just in frogs. Madagascar is also home to lemurs. It's the only place on the planet where you can find lemurs. Lemurs represent 5 full families, and there are 112 different species of lemurs. Now, when I first started working with the Madagascar project in 2005, there was 71 species. So there's been many new discoveries of primates. Lemurs range in size from the smallest, which is the Microcebus, about the size of like a hamster with a tail. Madam Birth's Microcebus, the mouse lemur, is the smallest primate in the planet. And the largest is the indri. It's actually the one that looks kind of like a teddy bear. They kind of jump through the trees like an athletic panda, and they're about the size of a kindergartner. So lemurs come in all shapes of sizes. And of those 112 species, according to the IUCN Red Data List, 91% of all lemurs are threatened with extinction. 91%. In fact, right now, lemurs are the most threatened group of animals on the planet. And that's because we have to look at the demographics of Madagascar. It's a developing country, just gained their independence from France in 1960, and they live in extreme poverty. The average income of the Malagasy people is less than $1 a day, and most children have to abandon school around 4th or 5th grade. And that's because they do a type of agriculture in Madagascar called slash and burn. It's where they burn down a section of the forest in order to plant crops. Right now there's about 24 million people living on the island with a 3% growth rate, and 95 to 98% of those people are subsistence farmers. It means they're only able to grow enough crops to maybe feed their family. Most families have one crop a year. So if something happens, a stochastic event, and they lose that crop, then their family doesn't have food for that year. Madagascar, we have to think about the culture of Madagascar, and these people love rice. They eat rice for breakfast, rice for lunch, and rice for dinner. Madagascar eats more rice per capita than any other country, and they actually import some of the rice to the island. Now, people in Madagascar living in extreme poverty depend on the forest for all basic needs: food, water, and shelter. Also, 100% of the people say that they use the plants for medicinal purposes as well. So if we think about this, I'm going to put my clicker down because I like to be visual on this too. So if we think about this, Madagascar was one of the last places on Earth to be inhabited by humans. Just 2,000 years ago, they had 100% forest. And today, they have less than 10% left. Less than 10%. We think maybe 7% right now. And so imagine all those frogs, those 800 species of frogs and 112 species of lemurs and 24 million people all competing for that little bit of original forest that's remaining. So that's why we're working in Madagascar, even though it's on the other side of the planet. And the important thing to remember is that as humans are most undeniably a part of the conservation challenges in Madagascar, they have to also be part of the solution. And so that's what we're doing. In 2010, I left my job at the zoo because I was working in conservation genetics with all these great scientists, and we could look at populations, we could see inbreeding coefficients, we can tell population size, we can see if rivers and roads are acting as barriers, and it just became so apparent to me personally that none of that matters if there's nowhere for these animals to go and if there's nowhere for them to live. So I felt really strongly that conservation is about community-based education, and that's the way that we're going to save endangered species. So Conservation Fusion, as Jesse said, is an international nonprofit organization, and it was a great way for me to combine my love for animals, children, and science to Conservation Fusion. With 2/3 of the population in Madagascar under the age of 20, it creates an excellent way to educate and influence that next generation of conservation leaders, the children of Madagascar, future leaders. And sometimes we might think to ourselves, like, who cares? You know, Madagascar is clear on the other side of the world from where we are here in the Midwest, almost exactly on the other side. Well, we should care because what happens in Madagascar is actually felt right here where we are. Just 4% of the Earth's surface are considered these biodiversity hotspots like Madagascar. So those regions are actually the lungs of the planet. They're providing us with clean air, clean water, and more than 80% of all medicines that we know about today come from these areas of high biodiversity. This pink flower is called the rosy periwinkle. It's endemic to Madagascar, and it's used in a drug that's used in childhood leukemia. It came from Madagascar. So we're all connected, and we all share this one planet. So tonight, what I'd like to do is take you on a journey with me to the island of Madagascar. It's a flight. It takes about 32 hours. 24 of those are actual in-the-air flight times. So I usually travel to Madagascar about 2 or 3 times a year. And I'm going to talk about 3 of the 4 sites that we work in Madagascar in partnership with the Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership, each harboring critically endangered plants and animals. And I put this slide, this is my husband, Dr. Ed Lewis, just because not only did I fall in love with Madagascar, but I also met Ed working in Madagascar. He's the conservation geneticist at the Omaha Henry Doorly Zoo, and also the founder of the Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership. It's a Malagasy NGO, and they do the research components, and at Conservation Fusion, we do the education components. So some things overlap, and we work together on a lot of things. So in case you hear me just say MBP, that's Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership. And really everything that we're doing is a collaboration. So we're going to start out at the very tip top of the island in a small village called Ndavaquera. And Ndavaquera is a littoral forest. It's near the big city of Diego Suarez. And it's home to this lemur right here, the northern sportive lemur, Lepolemur septentrionalis. It kind of looks big in this picture, but it's actually, in fact, about this big. An adult is about this big. It's the most endangered primate on the planet. More endangered than gorillas, more endangered than orangutans. We know that there's probably less than 50 individuals left. They cannot be kept in the wild. They have a specialized diet. They eat only certain leaves of certain trees, and every time that they've been tried to keep them in captivity, it never works. So our plan is really not to keep them in captivity, but to protect them and their habitat in the wild. So the first time I was in Ndavaquera, this is what we saw. There's a lot of illegal logging and within the park boundaries and also outside the park because the wood is made into charcoal for cooking fuel. We have to remember that these people in Madagascar and many developing countries are cooking with a 3-stone fire. That's how they eat, that's how they cook their food. I did mention that Madagascar is a new, I call it sometimes a baby country, just gaining their independence from France in 1960. And sometimes the government is a little bit unstable. They had a coup in 2009. And although they are considered a democracy, there's a lot of corruption, and a lot of the money that filters into the country is kept into the high government level. So unfortunately, a lot of this is facilitated by the government. So one of the first things that we like to do when we're working with these communities is to talk to them and ask them, hey, what are their challenges? How can we help them? What do they know about conservation? And when we got to Ndavaquera, the thing is, like, they know that the forest is important to them. They know it provides clean water, clean air. They get medicines from the forest. However, they feel like they have no choice because 100% said the problem that we have is there's no jobs available. The only source of income that we have is to cut these trees and to create the charcoal and sell it as fuel wood. So we started to do workshops with them, and we made these fuel-efficient stoves. And we worked actually with high school students, engineering students, and also MIT to develop these, to really modify these stoves. They're more healthy they're healthier for people to cook with. On those traditional 3-stone fires, all that smoke that comes from those is like, and most of people do the cooking inside these tiny little homes, so like maybe a 4x4 home. It's like smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. So it's not healthy. The rocket stoves, we did a lot of studies on those. They helped reduce the fuel wood by more than 50%. So they used much less fuel wood. These cook with actually just fuel wood, not charcoal, which uses even less wood. And they cook hotter and faster, so they have more time to spend on other things besides just cooking. So that's Sumina, she's our cook. And then we incorporate those types of things also with the schools that we work with in Ndavaquera. So these kids are, this one boy in the bottom picture has made actually a mask he went home and shared with his parents that tells the parents, hey, it's malaki laki, it's faster, it's healthier, they can save money on health bills. So another thing that we also do is to incorporate conservation and adapting these new behaviors in a way that really has an effect on their daily lives, because these people are working hard just to survive every day. We address some of the deforestation with Ed's program, the MVP. They are planting trees. They've planted over 50,000 native tree species, and the seedlings come from the feces of the lemurs, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But they work with the U. lemur coordinatus, and they collect the seeds from their poop. And the really important thing about the reforestation project is that it's all done with the local people. So you can see these ladies, they have these empty concrete bags, and they balance them on their heads with a bunch of seedlings, and the women, the men, and the children are all helping to restore the forest, and that creates ownership. They're not going to want to burn down a forest that they helped plant. We work with local women's groups. These ladies are part of the Veivavi Mandrusu Women's Association. They had already formed it when we arrived there. And if you can see in the center, these are the Satrana palms. And they actually are the ones that are used to make the baskets. So they said, like, hey, we want to be crafters. Like, right now we're charcoal sellers, but what we really want to be is basket crafters. So we help them formulate business plans and learn how to save money to buy the raw materials, and on their own, like, they're planting some of those raw materials, they're slow growing. So some of the things that we've done is help them to create like a logo for their organization. They decided that they wanted to do Veivavi Mandrusu Women Crafting for Conservation, and so that's how they can help share their story. We do art projects that connect children to the biodiversity in their own backyard, like there's a lot of chameleons up north. And many of the projects that we do, all the back work and the cutting of the different shapes and stuff before we get to Madagascar are done in service by students here in the United States. We do a lot with the University of Nebraska. This is a citizen science project there, and these kids are looking at the camera trap downloads. We built like boxes for the lumpy lemurs, and then we put camera traps to see if they would use the boxes. So this is actually one of the northern sportive lemurs that was in one of those photos. And because we have that partnership with the MVP and with the research teams, this is Richard, he's the head of the DART team, and Hashim, he's one of the Malagasy graduate students that works for Ed's program, and what they're doing is changing out a radio collar so that these animals can be tracked, and we can see what kind of food they're eating, what kind of territory they have, family groups, all that kind of thing. So it's a chance for us to bring the children from the village, and they can actually see the lemurs up close and become connected with them. This is conservation camp. We bring the kids into the forest. A lot of the species are nocturnal, including the northern sportive lemur. And if you can see the light up top in that picture, see the size of that compared to the kids? And that is the northern mouse lemur, Microcebus tavartra. So pretty cute little guy. And the good news is, like, we're seeing success. There might be only 50 left, but they are producing offspring. And because of the community's commitment to protecting this forest and receiving tangible benefits from conserving it, they're going to be more likely to protect it for the future. And this is actually a slide that came straight from Des Moines. We attended the ZAC conference in 2013 here, and some local students from Des Moines schools made these posters after learning about Madagascar. So we sent them over with Ed, and his team took a picture with them in Madagascar. And if you can see, look, Hashim is holding a northern sportive lemur. So there is connections happening right here in your own backyard, connecting with Madagascar. So we don't all have to go on that 32-hour journey to Madagascar. We can all take steps in our daily lives to learn about conservation, learn about endangered species, and share what we learn. Okay, next, we're on a 13-hour drive from the capital city of Antananarivo to get to the eastern rainforest of Kinjavatu. And this is another project site that we've been working in for several years, about 10 years. This will be our 10th year in Kinjavatu. We originally started working there because of this lemur. This is the greater bamboo lemur, Prolemur simus. It was actually once thought to be completely extinct in Madagascar. It was rediscovered in the early 70s by Dr. Patricia Wright in nearby Ranamafan National Park. And even at that time, right now there's only two of the Prolemur simus left in Ranamafan. However, in nearby Kinjavatu, it's about a 30-minute drive away, where we're working. This lemur was on the top 25 most endangered primate list when we started working there. And every 2 years, scientists and researchers get together at the International Primate Symposium, and everyone decides what animals are going to be on this top 25 most endangered primate list. And always 7 of them are lemurs from Madagascar, 7 out of the 25. So this guy was on the list for a long time, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So Kinjavatu is home to 8 different species of lemurs. The 3 in the red are endangered or critically endangered, including the greater bamboo lemur, the eye, and the black and white rough lemur. So one of the things that we do at Conservation Fusion, again, is connecting kids to the science of conservation, connecting kids not only to cute lemurs, but talking about why lemurs are important, not just to the environment, but to their daily lives. And by connecting them and letting them understand the importance and the value of lemurs, again, by knowing the treasures their country possesses, they're going to be more likely to protect it. So we currently work with 12 schools in the region, 4 very, very rural ones, and 8 we call them our core schools. And so when we first started working there in 2009, we created these mascots for each school. So think about it, here in the United States, like every school has a mascot. Every school has something that creates this pride. And so we just chose different species of animals in Kinjavatu, and each school now has their own mascot. And they're very popular. They even got to meet the president of Madagascar. So they all gave presentations to the president of Madagascar. You can see the leaf-tailed gecko, the eye. This is the sucker-footed bat, which is found only in Madagascar. It's a really cool bat species. They do have actual suckers on their hands, and they live in the rolled up fronds of the raffia trees. So we incorporate different kinds of educational lessons. The eyes mainly eat bugs, so this is the kids are trying to throw the bugs into the mouth of the eye. So we make things kind of fun, and it does really create a pride in the local lemur species, and the children and the teachers and the parents are really proud of having lemurs there. But it took time. We've been working there for 10 years. And right now I just want to talk a little bit about the black and white rough lemur. This is one of the ones that's on the critically endangered list. It's a frugivorous lemur, which just means that about 95 to 98% of its diet is fruit. Now this lemur actually, when it eats the fruit, it swallows it whole. And so when it passes through the digestive system of the lemur, we find that it can really it has a better generation rate. So in the scientific research that Ed and his team did, they found that when the seeds pass through the gut of the lemur, there's about an 85% germination rate. And if they were to get those same seeds from the forest and plant them, there's only about a 10% germination rate. So, hey, that lemur poop is really important. So there's actually a team of local people who goes out into the forest certain days a week. I think it might be Tuesday, Thursday, and they collect the lemur poop. So there are over 98 different species of trees that come from the lemur poop, just of the black and white rough. They have nurseries on a huge scale that they're planting trees at a production level right now, and all the native trees comes from the poop of the lemurs, and they employ local women's groups. 40% of the entire population of Kinjavatu, which is about 12,000 people, are enrolled in this conservation credit program. They're hired to plant trees, and it's almost like a Capital One credit rewards program, because those trees in the future are going to be valuable to them. But what are they going to do today, right now? Well, they can earn credits when they plant trees, and the game plan of the reforestation is that the top 50% of these reforestation corridors is all native tree species. There's a band of 35 trees that can be used as cash crops and selectively logged in the future. And that last band of 15 is fruiting trees, which they can use as entrepreneurial business, for food, different things like that. So it's a forest restoration program, but it's also addressing the needs of the local people. So again, we talk about this in the classroom. We say like, hey, who can tell us the lemur cycle? And so the kids say, hey, the lemurs eat the fruit, and inside the fruit are the seeds, and then it poops out the seeds, and that becomes the next generation of forest. Well, what happens if the lemur's removed from that cycle? The forest dies. And we know from some recent surveys and a recent publication that came out that 100% of the people living in the Kinjavatu area are using forest plants for medicinal purposes. So it's very important for them. To date, since 2010, over 1.6 million trees have been planted in Kinjavatu. There's a forest corridor that, the cool thing about it is that before the trees are planted, the land is contracted with local people. They sign a contract saying, this is my land, I'm donating it to be used for tree planting. I promise not to burn it. A lot of those trees are planted by over 5,000 children who are in our school programs. And what that does is creates an ownership. These kids are not going to want to burn down the forest that they helped create. This is just a quick map. The little things that look like houses are tree nurseries, which can hold some of them up to 50,000 seedlings. We get like reports from the reforestation team every Thursday, and today they sent us a report that they're planting, I think 16,000 trees this week. So trees are being planted at an enormous rate, and all of those white bands that you can see, those little white things, are all the trees planted in 2017. So at the very beginning it was really slow, but now it's kind of production level. So just to show like a small example, this little girl was in our class. One day we planted trees with the kids in 2011. Her name's Vulanarina. This is a vuapaka tree that comes from the poop of the Varissia. And this is her next to her tree in 2011. And then I saw her one day on the road with her brother, and I said, hey, let's go check out your tree. I was just saying when I gave this presentation earlier, like I should grab her again and see how big that tree is, because certainly it's grown, just showing there is progress being made. And when we see trees coming back, we also see insects coming back. We see more birds. We see amphibians coming back to the area, all seed dispersers. And the great thing is, remember at the beginning we saw like many Malagasy children have to abandon school around 4th or 5th grade. And this is Vulanarina. She's actually at the high school in Kinjavatu. So we're seeing some real successes. We know that 82% of the students know all 8 species of the lemurs and can just name them off. They all know the lemur cycle. They know the water cycle. They know the importance of lemurs. We take them into the forest with the local lemur guides who are monitoring the lemurs every day. It's a chance for them to see conservation as also a source of income. While these people are their brothers or their fathers or their uncles, and they're collecting an income being research guides. This is the kids with the glow bracelets. We sit under the eye nest. Kinjavachu is the only place in all of Madagascar where you can see an eye in the wild. It's never really been studied before in the true wild, and they have about 4 different eyes that they're following. They're very solitary. We do a lot of community-based activities also with the grown-ups who are so into it because, you know, a lot of times they've never used markers. This was a mapping activity. They were supposed to map out the forest corridors, but it was interesting. We learned a lot. Even though the reforestation plan was that 50-35-15, we saw the main thing that they liked putting on the maps was their houses and their rice fields, and the most important thing were the water sources. So that was a really great way for us to learn a lot from them, even not by them saying the words, but just by their actions. So we do a lot of children's books in the local Malagasy language. We have a different theme every year for our programs. We've done water, lemurs, One Health, like healthy people, healthy animals, healthy environment. We show movies. We just throw up a sheet and we can show pictures of the kids participating in our school programs. Their parents can see that they're invested. We show the David Attenborough series, BBC Madagascar, and it's actually been translated into the Malagasy language so they can understand it, which is really wonderful. And every year in November, December, we have a big conservation festival. We call it the Orama. So this year was Gidro Orama, which is Malagasy for lemur. And now the teachers have formed their own association, and they come up with the idea of the Oramas. It's a huge parade, and this year coming up will be our 10th annual. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit. But we've really taken a leap here in Kinjavachu, and I just want to say, when we first started there, these black and white rough lemurs, there were only 9 individuals, and today there's more than 60. More than 60. When we first arrived there, almost all the kids raised their hand that they eat lemurs, and today there's none. Because we have to remember, they're hunting lemurs as a source of food, but they don't know the value of the lemurs. So I think it's important for me to share that, we're not trying to tell them what to do, but give them the tools so that they can make informed decisions on their own. And we've seen a great success. I'm going to go back really quick to the greater bamboo lemur. Remember, once thought to be completely extinct, Kinjavachu is now the greatest population of greater bamboo lemurs, with many family groups and over 150 individuals, the largest group of greater bamboo lemurs in all of Madagascar. Also, the eye, very rare and elusive, never really studied before in the wild. They're following 4 eyes, and just this week, they reported a new baby. His name's Emerald. So it's big news. Great stuff. Ecotourism is on the rise there. And I put this because we did a project about plastic pollution with kids here in the US and connecting them with kids in Madagascar about plastic pollution. And just want to remind you that, again, we don't have to be working on a huge conservation program in Madagascar to make a difference for conservation. We can make choices in our daily life that can have a huge impact. What if we all stopped using single-use plastic bags? It would have a huge impact. Okay, and then finally, we're going to end up in Lavavulu. It's in the southwestern Madagascar. It's a whole nother ecosystem. It takes us 4 days to get there. 4 days. So we spend 13 hours in the car, 2 days, and 3 days actually, but it's beautiful. You see all kinds of different ecosystems. There's grasslands, there are these incredible baobab trees. This is what it looks like when you finally arrive in Lavavulu. And I always describe it like, as you're getting there, I always feel like you're almost like in an underwater world, but not really underwater. All the plants are cactus. It's this forest of cactus, but the plant life kind of reminds me of like underwater corals. It's gorgeous. So it's a forest, but all the trees are spiny and cactus-like. It's also home to the critically endangered radiated tortoise. It has the name because of the radiated pattern of on its scutes. And part of the problem is that radiated tortoises are harvested right before important holidays in Madagascar, like Christmas and Easter. That's a historic picture, but this is an actual picture from the forest of some shells that we found. And also, really is the illegal wildlife pet trade. So there's been so many cases of suitcases filled with these baby tortoises, all going to the black market. One of these radiated tortoises sells for $10,000 on the black market. So again, conservation has to involve the local people. This is Mansueta. He's a tortoise guide. He works for the Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership, and he's been working with them since 2007 or 8, one of those. And the fact is he monitors the tortoises every day, and he's never ever touched one because it's a fadi or a taboo for the people in Lavavulu to touch the tortoises. There are also Malagasy students. This is Ron's. She's looking at a habitat study to see if there's a change in the habitat of the vegetation with goats. They have a lot of goats and zebus in the area. And this is Uni. She's looking at the ringtail lemurs, which also live in this area. So again, it's back to education. This area is so remote, like most of these people have never traveled outside their village. They have no idea that what they have is really very special. And Lavavulu happens to be one of the last strongholds of the radiated tortoises. As I mentioned, it's also home to the ringtail lemur, like your little guy there. Those are ringtails. Like maybe a lot of people know from the cartoon, King Julian is a ringtail lemur. So again, it's about connecting people to the biodiversity in their own backyard and letting them know that they have something special. And we've been partnering with Blank Park Zoo for several years, and because of that partnership, we were able to continue to work in Lavavulu. We made these masks, and again, here's Richard from the DART team. They're radio collaring the ringtail lemurs, and it was a chance for these kids to really see the lemurs up close. And I'll tell you, they enjoy it just as much as we do. Okay, and because there's no giraffes, zebras, or lions in Madagascar, there used to be hippos. In fact, there were pygmy hippos in Madagascar, but they're extinct. We had gotten a grant to make these tortoise costumes for the kids in Lavavulu when I very first started, and we had to change all those giraffe hats. So again, we had an after-school program in Omaha where these kids learned about conservation, learned about tortoises, and helped us to create these tortoise hats. And so those went to 2 schools that we worked with in Madagascar. And we had another festival, an Orama festival. We ended up bringing some of those teachers from the eastern rainforest, and it was really great to bring them because they had already participated in some of these activities, so it helped us build this initial trust with the people in Lavavulu and the teachers that we were working with there. They helped the kids to write poems about the tortoises and really celebrate how special they were. We also were able to do some art projects. This is actually in the village of Lavavulu. And when we do this, like, not only the kids show up, but so do the parents, because most Malagasy parents, especially in this area, are illiterate. They can't read or write, but they've also, they've never painted, they've never worked with markers or anything like that. So it's very special, not only for the children, but also for the adults. And another project, we've done something here with Blank Park Zoo, and these are some school kids who, again, are learning about the plight of the radiated tortoise, learning about conservation, and then creating these little 3D tortoises that we take to Madagascar and share with the kids in Lavavulu. This guy right here, I love this man. His name's Tiandrazana. He's a fisherman. They live right on the Mozambique Channel. Lavavulu's right on the coast. And you can see how excited even he is about getting this paper tortoise. And when we come back years and years later, they still have those paper tortoises. we bring these kids on conservation camp, and we work with Malagasy students. We do kind of like the line transects so they can see what it's like to do research. And this is Slavu. He's another Malagasy graduate student. And I'll just mention they've graduated over 50 Malagasy graduate students in the MVP program. So it's a way to build local capacity for those future leaders of Madagascar. And this little girl's name is Andrea, and I met her when I first went to Lavavulu in 2011, and she was kind of like, she was the boss of all the kids, and she was kind of sassy, and she would always say like, Susie, Susie. In fact, she always mocked me. Like I would say, hey kids, and she would say, hey kids. Like she was just really a very smart girl. And she would always say to me like, Susie, can you build us a school? Can you build us a school? Because the closest school to the village of Lavavulu is about 20 kilometers away. It's hot. They walk there with no shoes in the sand, probably with no breakfast and no lunch. And I also met this man. He's the Nauda, the village elder, a really amazing man. And he said the same thing to me. He said, you know, the problem is, as a village elder, like, I know I'm a smart person. I know that these other gentlemen in the village, like, we know we're smart people and we could really do something for Madagascar, but we never had an opportunity to have any position of power because we don't know how to read and write. So for us, it truly is our dream that our children and grandchildren can have that right to an education. So we talked about it for a long time. We always talked about them owning the project and owning the conservation initiatives. And we also talked about the school. And they really, really wanted to build the school. So they said, like, we want to build a school, and we want to call it the Dream School. Sakuli Ninu Finu Fisana. All Malagasy words are long. So in 2012, we signed a contract with them to make sure that they were really invested and really wanted to have the school. And so we said, like, if you really want to do it, we're gonna do everything we can to help you. And so in the meantime, we kept working with the village of Lavavulu and also the nearby school of Itampulu, and we did art projects and talked about the importance of the tortoises. And then through service at the University of Nebraska on the Global Youth Service Day, we started to create these school uniforms in the likeness of the radiated tortoises. So it was a chance, again, for local and global conservation. How are we all connected, and why are tortoises important? And so we brought the shirts back, and we really didn't have enough money to build the school, but we brought the shirts back and we said, we're not there yet, but we're trying, and here's something to let you know that we haven't forgotten that, and we're working our hardest. And so then we kept up, and we did rocket stoves in Lavavulu, and they love the rocket stoves, and they build the rocket stoves all the time. We've taught them how to do it. I don't think I mentioned this, but water is very, very, very scarce in the south of Madagascar. Sometimes it doesn't rain for like 5 years. In fact, one time we were going there, and we said, like, hey, we stay in tents when we're in Madagascar, and we said, like, hey, let's not bring any tarps. We're going to Lavavulu. It never rains. And sure enough, like, it rained. It rained, but the people were so happy because it never, ever rains there. So if they get rain, it's a wonderful thing. They do have a well, and Ed's program has just built another well for them. So they do have water, but it's a distance for them to walk to get it. So we came across these. These were designed by a former architect who started a new firm called Project H Design, where the H is for humanity, designing products for people. And this is a water hippo roller. And it's really wonderful. They can pull this behind them. It doesn't put all that pressure on their spines when they're carrying that water on their heads. And plus, it takes less time to fill up the hippo roller once, and they can get 8 times as much. So I said, hey, I'm going to try this thing out for myself. And when we got to the well to pump the water, the girls were all saying, Valu, Valu, Valu. And I was like, why are they all saying 8? They were trying to say 8 buckets. We can fill this thing the same as we can fill 8 buckets. So it was a great opportunity because now these girls who traditionally are the ones that have to fetch the water don't have to spend their entire day fetching water. They can fill up the hippo roller, put it into a barrel that we've given them, and then they can be in school for the rest of the day. And this is the dream school. Have I already said we built the dream school? Sometimes it's about perspective, right? So when we go sometimes to these schools in Madagascar, this is in the nearby school, the one the kids have to walk to in Itampulu. Kids are climbing trees outside trying to get in the classroom. The teacher's outside with a stick, like trying to get kids back from coming in the classroom. So we really do try to accommodate as many kids as we can. But then remember those little paper tortoises? I had a chance to work with some underprivileged kids in Omaha who were thinking that they didn't have everything, and then we talked about the kids at the Dream School, and then they wrote notes to the kids in Madagascar on the backs of these tortoises because they realized, like, hey, these kids are fighting for an education, and I have it right here, and it's right in front of me. So it's about perspective, and again, we line up all the kids that can't fit in the classroom, and we give them all a turtle, and they keep them for years and years. So one day after we got done working at the school, we all piled in the car to drive back to Lavavulu, and that's when it really hit me hard. Like, there was that little Andrea girl again, and I thought, well, if it's the last thing we do, we've got to get her a school in Lavavulu. So we kind of just set our mind to that, and in 2014 we were able to start construction on the Dream School. That was our building permit, just tied to a cactus written on a piece of cardboard. We had an intern that worked with us for several years, Marin, and she started a hygiene project. I shared with her that the first time we went to Lavavulu, they had never seen soap before, which was like really pretty a cute thing. Like, they were all washing their hands. We talked about the One Health philosophy, and then the kids were like so excited about the soap. They were putting it all over themselves, and they had white faces, and so I was sharing that story with her. So she did a hygiene project. She collected soaps and toothbrushes, and she had children in America write stories in Malagash. And this was actually a project from the first year that we partnered with Blank Park Zoo. This was a mural that we did at the school in Itampulu that's still there and still looks wonderful. We did an orama there, the sukake orama. Sukake is the Malagasy word for tortoises. And the costumes are all just made out of like recycled cardboard. And this is a couple more pictures of the kids at the event. And this is what it looks like when poachers are in town in Lavavulu. So the tortoises are all put on their backs because they can't run away. And as I mentioned earlier, those they live right on the coast. So they come in boats, they gather up all the tortoises, and luckily this time when they came by, their boat had a hole in it. And one of the things that we had talked to the children when we were in the school is like, hey, you have something special here. You have radiated tortoises, and you might not know it, but they're not found anywhere else, just right here. And if you see someone coming and taking the tortoises, tell the local police, tell your teacher, tell your parents. And so because the kids saw this, these children were able to tell their parents. And this happened not one time, not two times, 3 times. These kids were able to help save over 600 of these critically endangered tortoises. This is Dada. He's our construction man. These benches were also built in the Dream School, part of the Blank Park Zoo grant, and the community is so invested and wants to be so much of a part of it. You can see the Nauda every morning. He would just get up and with his stick and make his way to see what was happening with the Dream School, and they said like, hey, we want to help. So they helped us to paint the school. It was like pretty fun. And one of the things is all across Madagascar, all schools are blue on the bottom and white on top. And they said, but we don't want our school to be a regular school. We want the Dream School to be beautiful, and we want a mural on it like the one that was at the other school. So it has a mural of a tortoise on it. We did a hand washing station to talk about hygiene, and they can fill that barrel up with the hippo roller. And we put mirrors up. And for many of these kids, this was the very first time they've ever seen their reflection. So they were having a lot of fun with those mirrors. So remember, like, if you just follow your dreams, it really can come true. The Nauta was so happy to have the Dream School, and in 2015, November of 2015, we had a school inauguration. And this picture is from last year. We see radiated tortoises near the school all the time. It's a place where they're always safe because they're protected by this community. We've done a library at this school. We built a house for the teacher. One of the things in the MOU was we wanted to have an educated teacher because typically in Madagascar, just some child in the class says, hey, I'm going to be the next teacher, so they can only teach what they know. So we said, hey, if we build the school, it's just a building. It's just a shell. It matters like what happens inside, so we want to have an educated teacher. So if we have an educated teacher, in a rural area, we wanted them to be happy, so we built the teacher house. And a couple years ago, we started a club for girls, and we said, like, hey, what should be the name of your club? And they said, how about the Girls with No Shoes Club? So we teach women's empowerment and help these girls. We're going to do a cooking class with the girls this summer. And we started a project to do a lunch program. We've done lunch programs in some of the other sites that we work at, in Andavaquera and Kinjavachu, and some of the schools sell the produce, some have school lunch day, some sell the vegetables for rice. So we started a garden club, and they also are doing reforestation in Lavavu with native tree species. They're a lot more slow growing than the others, but we were able to do the lunch project last year. So this is the lunch building. There's the kids with all their lunch equipment. With Blank Park Zoo's help again, we have done One Health hygiene programs. Kids learn about how it's important to have a clean people, clean animals, clean environment. A school donated underwear, and last summer we did, because they're mainly fisher people, we also did some projects about the ocean and ocean education, which was really fun for them. And the fun thing was, remember I talked about that tea and Drozna? Then we always end at the beach day. It's white sandy beaches, untouched. No one's been there. When we got some of the books that we brought for the library were like sea books, just picture books with sea turtles and all kinds of different things. And hey, he knew all of them. So that was kind of neat. Okay, and then remember that Andrea, the little sassy girl, I saw her last summer, and I was so happy because she attends high school in Itampulu, so she's also in school. So we've just been seeing such a success and a way for people, animals, and the environment to thrive together, that there is a possibility for conservation and to incorporate people. So this was a radiated tortoise that we saw on the road on our way out the past summer when we were there, and it made me really think, like, like sometimes they say, like, the line in the sand, like, can you see his footprints in the sand? So I'm so happy to be here tonight, and I think with partnerships and support from places like the Blank Park Zoo, there really is a hope for the wild. And so the last thing I would just want to say as we kind of finish up here is that, again, we don't all have to travel to Madagascar to make a difference. There are things that we can do right here, things that Blank Park Zoo is doing. You can plant some pollinator habitat and register your garden on the Plant Grow Fly website. You can continue to attend the speaker series, buy a zoo membership. Every time you purchase an ice cream cone at the zoo, or I don't know if you have a train, ride the train. Blaine Park Zoo supports Conservation Fusion's work, and we couldn't have done all of these incredible things without the support of zoos like Blaine Park, and you all are such a part of it. So if we can continue to learn more, share more, act responsibly, recycle, just make small steps towards conservation, we can collectively have a huge impact. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you.